What's going on, everyone? So today we got a little bit more of a fun video talking about some new spoilers, but I wanted to touch on yesterday's video real quick. I am going to put out a couple feelers and see if I can get maybe a bunch of people together to talk about the competitive scene in general and what we want from it. Not anything to go ahead and assert blame or anything like that, but kind of what we would like to see, especially based on a lot of community opinion, because so many of you are actually really passionate about this. I had so many comments on my previous video that, well, it just makes me motivated to kind of bring more of that conversation to the forefront because, well, I have the option to do so. But I just wanted to let that sink in for anyone who's curious about yesterday. But today, as I said, we got some fun stuff to talk about. Big thing in my patrons, and let's dive into the first one, which is the brand new leader we got today, Ahsoka Tano. Ahsoka Tano, really interesting here. Vigilance, heroism, action, use the force, give a friendly unit sentinel for this phase. She's a force fringe unit, so this is the Ahsoka Tano, pretty much from the Ahsoka series. Otherwise, well, this would have been like Fulcrum if we were getting that version. That would have been pretty sick. But she deploys for 6 as a 5/6, and she has on attack, you may give her friendly unit Sentinel for this phase. So pretty cool. Nice little Sentinel generator. And honestly, this seems relatively strong. One of the things that I'm kind of thinking of is a way to just put Sentinel on so many different things every single turn. Just think about it. The new high toughness vigilance base, yes, it has lower HP, which may be a concern, but we have so many high toughness units that were released in this set that you could potentially generate the force every single turn with Ahsoka. And that means that you turn 2 can give Sentinel to your 2-drop or your 2 resource, or your turn 2 play rather, or you can give Sentinel to your turn 1 play and just stall out the game a little bit longer. And then that can continue all the way up because you're continuously playing units that's going to generate the force for you. And that can be decently strong. A nice, powerful stalling tool. And then you deploy into a very high power unit that can potentially knock out some more units. And you can even give herself Sentinel in that late stage of the game, which is pretty nice. I can definitely see this ability being relevant. I think the biggest thing is if you're going to play this stalling out Sentinel style game, I think the biggest thing is that the lower HP of the bases is actually going to harm you the most. So that's the only thing that I'm thinking about. Either you use the common force generating bases, which forces you to attack, and that's going to be less Sentinel potential because it's going to be less guaranteed oftentimes, that at least I've found, than the vigilance base. Or you could use that vigilance base, or maybe one of the other bases like the command one to give you force at any given moment. But that means you're dropping down to 25 HP, as I mentioned, which is a really big dip. So I think that's something that really could harm the overall viability. But I think there's some potential here in Ahsoka. I would love to see like a double vigilance, high toughness Doom Ahsoka build. I think that would have been pretty interesting. I've been a pretty big fan of Doom, but I also just think it fits pretty well with Ahsoka and what she's trying to do. Next up, we've got Dooku. 4 cost ground unit in Cunning, 5/4 Force Jedi, hidden, and when played, each friendly unit with hidden can't be attacked for this phase. So what is this? This is, well, first off, a 4 resource 5/4 Force Jedi. So pretty awesome there. Got the relevant tags, got a nice stat line, can't be attacked when it comes down. All great stuff. And then it re-triggers hidden for every single person on the board that had hidden before, which is really awesome, actually. This can be a very powerful tool to set up more damage in the following turns. Just think about it. Turn 1, turn 2, you're just playing a couple units. Maybe it's got hidden. And turn 3, you've got a bunch of units. Your opponent's got a couple units. They're going to attack your units to kill them. And then you play Dooku. And suddenly, all of those units you have on board are going to be prevented, or at least in terms of if they have hidden, they're going to prevent your opponents from actually getting them attacked, which means they'll probably live that turn. You'll get in more damage with all of them. And then the next turn after that, you'll probably get in even more damage with them because they're still alive. That can be potentially pretty strong. So I think Dooku's interesting, and we'll see if there's more hidden in the set. But we are running out of cards to see. So I don't think right now that any of the hidden cards look particularly insane. Aura Sing is one of the better ones that I've seen, for example, but we will see if there's going to be more. Force Tag is very relevant as well. Next up, we've got T6 Shuttle 1974, 3-cost space unit, Vigilance Heroism, 3/4, so nice stat line. When this unit is attacked, you may give an experience token to this unit. So obviously, the immediate thought is Double Blue Ahsoka, right? Double Blue Ahsoka, you get to play this on, let's say, turn 2, and maybe you've already generated the Force, and suddenly you are getting this Sentinel, and you're going to prevent any sort of attacks from your opponent in space. That's pretty nice, right? That's pretty nice. Of course, that means that, again, if you have the Vigilance base, this unit is also going to be generating that Force token for you because it's got 4 toughness, right? That's pretty nice. So this has a lot going for it. It works perfectly as a Sentinel body. Because remember, this says when this unit is attacked. And actually, it even has the parentheses here. This is when it's attacked, you're getting the experience token. So actually going to be a 4/5 on defense, which is pretty tough to break through and will oftentimes finish off your opponent's units should they decide to attack into it. So it's actually quite powerful, especially in an Ahsoka style deck. So I think this card does have some pretty good potential here. Next up, we've got the big Squid Hyperspace Wayfarer. I love this card, honestly. 6-cost space unit in command. It's a 4/10. That's it. It's a creature. It's awesome. There's not really much else to say. It's probably unplayable. A 6-cost space unit just being a 4/10 and doing nothing else is pretty bad in terms of the overall effectiveness in the game. But guys, it's a freaking 4/10 flying space monster. It's so cool. I love it. Nice little Pergle here on the card. I think it's really cool to see, but there's not really much else to say. Then it's just a fat unit, got a high toughness. So if there's some sort of toughness synergy that matters, which there were a couple of cards that did deal with that, maybe this is going to get a little bit better. But even so, 6-cost 4/10, it's a common. I don't think it should be that exciting, but I don't think it's pretty playable at all. Next up, we've got Shatter Point, and this one's actually pretty cool. This one's a 4-cost event in Vigilance. Choose one, defeat a non-leader unit with 3 or less remaining HP, or use the Force. If you do, defeat a non-leader unit. First off, art on this, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. If I remember correctly, this is the Ryloth scene with Mace Windu when they're assaulting the Separatist base. Really, really sweet art, and it gives me goosebumps because I remember Mace Windu like breaking out a lot of the clone troopers out of the AT-STs that were not the AT-STs. Oh my gosh. What is the 6-legged crawler for the Republic? I forget the Republic crawler name. Anyways, really, really sweet. AT-ET? Is that what it is? Anyways, this card looks pretty good. Defeated non-leader unit with 3 less remaining HP is relevant. That can oftentimes kill a lot of things on turn 3 on its own. But of course, if you're playing a Vigilance mid-rangey control deck that has some sub-theme of Force synergies, this is a 4-cost Vanquish, right? 4-cost, use the Force, get to vanquish something. I think that has a lot of potential. It's also a Force event in of itself, which means that does it have any synergies yet? Not really, but maybe there will be. Again, we're hoping for a leader that's going to work with the events. So maybe don't look out for this. This one seems pretty straightforward to me. I don't think there's a lot of explanation needed. It's a 4-cost Vanquish if you have the Force consistently. That's a big payoff, right? That's a 1 cheaper removal event in Vigilance because you have the Force. That's powerful. So I think that has a lot of potential if we're able to construct a deck that works with it. Because again, the biggest downside I see with these more controlling mid-rangey cards is that the Force bases reduce your HP, which is something that they want. Next up, we've got Graceville Pergle. This is a 5-cost space unit in Vigilance. It's a 2/7 Sentinel. Pretty straightforward. Can be potentially decent. I like these fat Sentinels in the mid-game. I think if you're fighting up against a deck that's really space focused, this could absorb a lot of attacks, and that could have some potential. But that's pretty much it, right? If your deck is specifically looking for a fat space sentinel in the mid game, is this something that you want to play? Maybe if you have got some creature synergies like Kanan, for example, makes me think of maybe putting in Graceful Pergle because of the shield token. That's going to be really obnoxious. In other decks, I think it's less likely because you do have other space sentinels available to you. And so I don't think this really fits in there, but it's still cool. Still Pergle. I think that's awesome. 2/7 fat unit. So that's not bad at all. Next up, we've got Protect the Pod. And hey, look at that. That is the Toughness Matters card that I was mentioning earlier that I remember seeing. This is a 4-cost event in command. A friendly non-vehicle unit deals damage equal to its remaining HP to an enemy unit. So for a lot of people, they compared this to Strike True. You know, you get a event that is based off of one of your stats and you just deal damage to an opposing unit. A, this is 1 cost higher. B, it's non-vehicle. Both those things is really important because, and C, it's also remaining HP, but both those two things are really important because 4 cost versus 3 cost is a big difference, and it kind of matters a lot. It's a high cost increase. And non-vehicle is also pretty important because that means you can't hit space units, which is really a big downside. And of course, any ground vehicle unit too. Of course, if they have like Pergle in space, you could still hit them. But I don't think this is all that strong. I do think remaining HP is better, generally speaking, than power. Usually units baseline have higher toughness than they do power. So I think that's potentially a bonus. But Strike True was never like a meta staple. It was just like a 1 or 2 of in some of the more mid-rangey ramp decks. So seems kind of mediocre to me. Next up, we got the other leader revealed this week, and this is Morgan Elspeth. This is a command villainy leader with an action. Choose a friendly unit that attack this phase. Play a unit from your hand that shares a keyword with the chosen unit. It costs 1 less. First off, guys, units that make other, or I should say leaders that make other units cheaper, immediately something that I am way more excited about, right? Just because we have potential ramp built in to the unit itself. And this is a tricky one. This is a very tricky one, mainly because when you're looking at this, how are you going to really determine to build your deck around this? Because yes, you could get some pretty big value, but this one has to chain the specific keywords together in a row. What that means is that, let's say you are going ahead and trying to play a deck with all the keywords, similar to like what Boba Fett would do. And we're playing villainy. We're looking for cheaper units. Well, maybe turn 1, you can play a restoring unit, which means turn 2, you can play a 4-cost restoring unit. That seems pretty good. Restore is pretty common. Okay, well, what about like ambush or overwhelm? These are pretty strong, but you have to have very cheap units that have these costs, right? Because in order to do the ramping, you need the realistically 2, 3, and 4 cost units that can ramp into the bigger ones. And do we have those? Well, right now we don't have a great selection in, let's say, command alone. Let's limit down our options here. And if we're thinking about some of the keywords, well, of course, on like turn 1, you can play some of the piloting ones. So if someone has piloting, you can play a unit that shares the piloting keyword with them for a little bit cheaper, which I guess that's something. It's not great, but it's something. Some of the restorers, like Daughter of Dathomir, for example, it can have Restore 2. I guess it does have Restore 2 on the baseline unit, but other units that have Restore, like Morgan Elspeth herself, the unit version, can definitely be played a turn earlier if you play a turn 1 Restore unit, so that's not bad. So there are some cool things you can do. Realistically, though, what I would be excited about is trying to, and this is honestly probably good enough on its own, chaining ambushes together. And then you're like, okay, what can you do? Because you have the 7-drop Maul and the 7-drop Vader. Do we have any 5-drop ambushers? Well, I think this is where you could potentially pair this with Bosk, for example, or Syndicate lackeys. Because in Cunning and Command, you have Bosk, Syndicate lackeys, and Terentatek. Now, Terentatek gives ambush when an opponent controls a force unit, so as long as they have a force unit, you can chain into Vaders and Mauls. You also have Agent Callus, but that's like pretty weak. I think Agent Callus is just bad. But Syndicate lackeys and Bosk is pretty good. And then you can, the following turn, attack and then play a Vader for 6 resources, which is pretty interesting. So there are some options with Morgan Elspeth, but it's going to be a little bit tricky because you don't have a ton of cheap units that are going to work with it. On another note, we get a 3/6/5 to deploy unit, and this one just applies to any keywords on your units, not just the ones that attacked on that turn, which is another limitation. So pretty exciting unit. I think it's our leader. I think it's really cool, but not necessarily all that powerful with the cards that we currently have. Next up, some cards that work with Morgan Elspeth. 3-cost ground unit, Magistrate Scout, Vigilance Villainy, 2/4 Restore 2. This one, it's kind of like your Yoda, but just worse, right? That's how you have to compare it. Yoda, 2/4 Restore 2, gives you a card when it dies. Also a Force unit. Way better than Magistrate Scout. And even Yoda isn't something that you play all the time, right? So this one just seems like a worse Yoda to me. Maybe there's something you can do with Imperial Trooper. And of course, if you're playing Morgan Elspeth, maybe you want to play this because you want to play a 5-drop Restorer on the following turn if you're able to attack with this, which is kind of nice. But that follows up into Kiotti Mundi. Now, this is kind of interesting. By the way, absolutely love the art on this one as well. Love the Geonosis arc for Clone Wars. One of my favorites, honestly. Geonosis arc, the Umbara arc, these two. And of course, the final 4 episodes. Just absolute peak Star Wars. This 4-cost ground unit in Aggression Heroism, 4/4 Force Shadow Republic. When played, you may use the Force if you do draw 2 cards. Pretty straightforward. Not too bad. So I've talked a lot about how I don't view drawing cards as all that powerful in Star Wars Unlimited compared to other trading card games, like Magic, for example. But drawing cards is still powerful. It's when you're going out of your way a significant margin to draw cards where I find it to be very weak in Star Wars. This one, what are you doing? Well, you have to play a Force deck, which isn't too difficult to do. There's a lot of decks that are trying to build around that anyways. So let's say you're playing a Force deck already. Okay, we've got that checked off. B, all you're doing is playing him and you get to draw the 2 cards, right? For 4 resources. That's not bad. You have to use the Force, but that could potentially work in a lot of those Force decks. What's the sacrifice? Well, to me, you get a little bit of a weaker statted unit, right? A 4/4 is below the curve for statted units on 4 resources. You're looking for a 5/4 or a 4/5, and some units are even like 4/6s or 5/5s, right? So you get a weaker unit, but you get to draw 2 cards. Is that worth it? Well, it could be. Something like K2SO is a weaker unit, but the effect on him is so powerful that it's played. So is this something that has potential? Maybe. If this is something that can fit into maybe like an Anakin blue or a Rey red style of deck with the Force drawing you a couple cards to kind of fill up in the mid to late game, that's where it might fit in. Outside of that, probably not. But maybe we'll see in the future. But that's going to wrap up all the spoilers today. We had a good amount of them because, as I said, I wait to the end of the week nowadays to go out and go through them all. But there were some pretty exciting ones. And as I mentioned, guys, I just want to appreciate everyone that kind of came together in the previous video and shared their thoughts. There was a lot of people who were like, why are we even talking about this? Does it even matter? There are a lot of people that are like, hey, this is really important to me, kind of ruins the competitive scene. And there were even, as I said, a few YouTubers that came by and, shared their thoughts and everything like that. So it was really cool just to see a bunch of people gathering together, regardless of what you think about it. I was just really excited to see how many people were interested in talking about the topic in the first place. That's something that always catches my eye as someone who generally tries to make videos that I think are exciting and fun for the community to talk about and the community to take part in. So just something to think about, and maybe I'll get back to you with a future video on it. But until then, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all for the next one.